Hi everyone, welcome back to Water is Love live talks on Instagram. Hi Gail, hope you can hear me.
I can.
Wonderful. This is the third attempt and now apparently successful. Um, so very happy for your presence and for making time. We're having these talks on the occasion of the publication of our documentary, Water is Love, Ripples of Regeneration. And it's a real pleasure and honor to have you with us as somebody who's, um, yeah, has transformed the way we think about and act upon the climate crisis in profound ways as a visionary thinker and strategist of Extinction Rebellion and now beyond in many different ways. So, yeah, I'll ask a few questions. And maybe I want to start with this because like one of the things that I really like so admire and appreciate in you is your radical determination to actually look at the scale of the crisis and to say we need to find ways to act at appropriate scale, like not to shy away to like, okay, we will recycle it a little bit and maybe be vegan and fly less, but like how do we actually unplug the anti-life system that is running on this planet? And a few years ago, the response that you found was we need to have mass civil disobedience to force the system into climate action. And I know that your thinking, also through the experience with Extinction Rebellion, has continued to evolve, and your activism has continued to evolve. So maybe we can just start with like, and I know this is a huge question, but I trust also that you're being asked it oftentimes. So like, I'm curious, like, what has your when you look at back at your journey over the last years, like what have been the main learnings in the experience with XR, and um, how has your thinking kind of continued to evolve around like what do we do actually about the climate crisis?
Yeah, thanks, Martin. I mean, of course, it's not a climate crisis. That's part of the point, isn't it? The the first thing that I was working on, prior to Extinction Rebellion, was called Compassionate Revolution, and it was about acts of art, heart, and civil disobedience. And we didn't really have the full strategy down, but we had a feeling that those components were needed and that there needed to be sort of different groups working together and that there would be moments around making the democratic changes necessary. Civil disobedience and mass civil disobedience felt really critical. And I feel like it was at that time, certainly in the UK, I can't speak for anywhere else, in terms of that sense of the possibility of being a murmuration, of being a mass movement. And I do feel like that is what I'm walking, is like, how do we operate as a body? Um, so the word scale feels something of that current, system of modernity. How do we scale this up? It's more like, how do we find ourselves as a body that's back in life, and that where how we show up together is in service to life, and we feel our connection with and as part of life. So that they're the sort of big questions, and of course they take you down lots of alleyways around, well, what is this illness that we're in? And there's been some brilliant writers around that. Vanessa Mercado de Oliveira, for example, others. Um, and I suppose I come from the perspective that I don't think, and when I talk about life, I don't just mean sort of what the standard average biologist might mean by life. I mean the animate universe. I mean that of all creation, of all, the star beings. I don't fully understand that. I don't believe that it's a kind of sort of moral force that's somehow sort of good. um I believe it has a sort of and despite that, I sort of believe it has an underlying tapestry of love, and I believe it has a underlying tapestry of purpose for more beauty and more complexity, and it has cycles in it, and somehow in that we're in a co-creation with this consciousness because we are of it, and we've come out of that co-creation into we're doing something collectively at the moment that's works against the complexity and the beauty, and so there will be a great rebalancing. And how do we want to be in relationship to that great rebalancing? I don't know if I'm talking too sort of esoterically here, but I just don't want to think, as much as there's been horrendous suffering and there still is, this sort of concept that it's somehow a mistake feels just doesn't feel fully true to me. It feels more like to say life will throw up and try lots of different things, and the things that aren't in alignment with life, though it will be rebalanced some way. And part of that feels to me that we can work out, okay, that there is a pathway that one can do that's about domination and control, about, people call patriarchy. And even there, like when you think that human beings, Mickey Cashtan says it like this, we fell out of trust with life. Like part of me wants to honor that. Why would we just trust life when it's thrown an ice age at us or something like that, right? So we come out of trust with life, we go this route of domination control, and we're overdoing it. And like any imbalance in the body, there's an immune response. And so how do we find our togetherness enough to say, I recognize that something here is not working, and I'm part of the rebalancing and the refinding the connections. I don't know if that makes sense. That's I've been thinking about it recently.
Yeah, I mean, I hear also because I kind of ask about the journey with Extinction Rebellion, and I also hear that there is a certain acceptance of like massive changes coming, and it might be beyond, this idea of maybe an anthropocentric sort of climate action where we can kind of manage conditions like suited for a certain type of human culture, to like surrendering to a maybe really disruptive process that will be needed for reconnection. And I appreciate this also very much in your work and in your writing of like actually the embrace of collapse in ways that can be liberatory. I'm curious also about your journey with this though, because to actually embrace that, like it requires not just like intellectual courage, but I would also say emotional and spiritual courage in some ways. So I don't know if I'm understanding you right.
Yeah. Thanks for the question. These things are of sort of complexity. I think you sort of meet things intellectually and with the emotional body, and on a sense of something spiritual as well. And I'm just very mindful of sitting here. Life's still pretty normal for me. There's water coming out of the tap. I've just had a nice dinner, a nice lunch. Anything that you say is a level of hubris and disconnection and
Mm,
complicity. It just is. And really, I find civilization that we're in, I find it disgusting.
mm.
Just think it's disgusting. I don't know how, that's a word that I'm writing a blog at the minute about a Netflix series called Adolescence. I don't know if you've come
Haven't
across it.
seen it. No.
I found it very, very powerful. It's actually filmed in my hometown, in my high school, of all things. So it's very personal, and it's about a young man who stabbed and killed a girl who's got sort of caught up in the incel
Mm,
stuff, and yeah, it's gone that route and the consequences, and it's filmed in a particular way that brings the emotion home. I think it's topped all the charts, etc. So the prime ministers had a round table about it. It's a big deal in the UK. And in back in 2003, I wrote a paper. I used to lead a team of IT sector companies. Back in my previous life, I was in the sort of world of corporate social responsibility, which I think is the biggest load of bullshit, really. A few good people trying to do some decent stuff, but what a load of nonsense, really. Anyway, I was there for a couple of years in that sort of sector, and saying to these IT companies, even this was before Facebook, right? You're unleashing something here, and you need to be responsible. And they didn't want to be. It was AOL. I'm naming them: Microsoft, Intel,
Mm.
Google, not Google, weren't there? Yeah, BT, Cisco Systems. Yeah, they didn't. Too bad. Oracle. You know, and you just watch it unfold. Anyway, it's just and it's an example of something. And actually, what I haven't released that blog yet, but I'm naming something happened to my son that could have killed him. That's related to that stuff, and so it's very personal. It comes into your own home, and it's like we've got a friend in connection, haven't we, Al Nulada, and sometimes he sounds blessings on your life, brother. He sounds quite, dare I say it, misanthropic. But I'm sort of saying things like Pat McCabe would say, "Oh, we've got low self-esteem right now, and we want to reconnect with our purpose as a keystone species." And it's like, yeah, it's right to be disgusted with ourselves in
Mm-hmm.
some ways. It's disgusting, this civilization. So part of me is, yeah, I don't want to be hubristic. Oh, it just needs to go, and at the same time, it just needs to go.
Mm-hmm.
It's disgusting. So, and there's something with what I really loved about the film was the emphasis on young people and young people's agency, and that there are things that can be done that are in connection with life and that respond to the times that we're in. And we can go that route. And of course, I believe more than one thing can be true at the same time. Like, this is horrendous, what's
Mm-hmm.
been this generation. And also, what an incredible privilege to be alive at this time when change is has to happen, that the space is opening up, the ground, even as things burn and flood and things die, like what will we create together out of necessity? So that's, I guess, part of my path really has
Mm-hmm.
been, don't carry on in the autistic way I realize I do, in my special interests of like what are the systems at play here, and how do we listen to the wisdom in them and move on from them.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm curious also if you wanted to say more about kind of the work that you feel relevant. Like, and obviously, I'm not asking on a kind of universalist level, but like, what is the work that you feel relevant and that you are called to at this point? And also, yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I'm working on collapse preparing communities. We've sort of connected in with Adam Greenfield's book Lifehouse. He had this experience of being part of Occupy Sandy when 60,000 volunteers self-organised to provide relief to the people that were on the sharp end of Hurricane Sandy. And yeah, it's gone off and researched decision-making processes and the social movements that have really come from a mutual aid perspective, like the Black Panthers and some things that happened in Greece. And obviously, I know it's very close to your heart with the family in Rojava. And so, and I think because there's so much madness out there now, so much distraction, so much flooding the zone with shit, as old Steve Bannon said, it's time to really be discerning if it, I'm sure it always was, but where our energies are focused and what we need to build. And looking at it from a systemic lens, there's a guy, Daniel Schmachtenberger, that followers might have come across, who talks about a third attractor, and he laid down some criteria for pulling our system into a different, or for a new system to emerge, these criteria for this third attractor. And when you think about preparing communities for collapse and building power to make decision making and to meet times of collapse, it feels like it really maps very closely to the third attractor definition that he's made. And it also feels like a thing that can very much fractalize, if that's a verb. There are ways in which you can work on the systems in your own body, in your group, in your community, to bioregional level, etc. So there's those layerings. And there's something that the neo-reactionaries have managed to manifest within this domination and control patriarchal paradigm, which I think Naomi Klein wrote brilliantly about in Doppelganger, this sort of diagonalization, you're pulling people into a space, makes no logical sense as a collective sort of movement. It's not one party, and yet you've got this body of people, some of whom you would never have expected the words to come out of their mouth. Oh, Donald Trump's shaking things up or something like that. You're like, how the fuck did that happen? So they sort of created this space that's part of the reveal of fascism. That sort of was at the heart of this, and this is why I say it's disgusting, because it's a fascist project. Modernity, it always has been. Um, and that's going to run. It's going to do its thing. There's a film, a very dystopian film, sort of 2073, that's talking about what's here now, the surveillance tech and where that easily takes us. So what's the other route we want to go in? And in that way, there's that possibility of lots of us being together but not having to be the same. I suppose is the way it needs to be. So like with a moment around civil disobedience. Um, that there was something that kind of created a form. We XR, especially in the UK, we had a thing that we did. We created a sort of container, and we said, "Come if these principles speak to you, if this vision speaks to you." And at the same time, it was very sort of, in a good way, a machine that had a form in it to bring people together and help people to find each other. But it had this one real purpose, which was mass civil disobedience. And would guess, I've never asked them all, but the other co-founders, that none of us thought, even if the government signs up to these demands, which they did more or less, we had 3 demands and they did more or less. I mean, there's quite a bit of less in there, but it wasn't going to happen within the economic, the political economy that we have. That's just going to keep rearing its head. So it had to pave the way for some democratic phase to come, and that is here in the movements now, where there's a lot more to do with creating assemblies and our own people's assemblies and citizens' assemblies. What I've come to understand is those assemblies have to have power and agency. And I think the place where you best have power and agency, when you ask, what are we going to do as a community to face up to the time of collapse? You might not choose to use them words. You might talk about community resilience. There's going to be crises coming. I mean, the language in is open to question, because if you ask it so starkly, you might put some people off and not ready to be in that facing yet, but they do know it's a shit show, to be honest.
Can you paint this picture a bit more? Like, what do you imagine as, like, you mentioned the assemblies, but like, how do you imagine like collapse preparing communities to arise? What are they doing?
Well, so for example, what always helps, I believe, is scenario planning. So if you live in a community that's likely to flood in the next decade, what are we going to do in the face of a flood? Or what the food system is almost guaranteed to fall over, as I've understood from reading George Monbiot. And you can go at it more from the so-called cost of living crisis, right? But it's a process of we're working on a design at the minute, but if you were an individual in your community, like, what should I do? You find some other people that are like you as a first step. Go and talk to what we call anchor people, parish councillors, they'd be called in the UK, anchor organisations. Get to know the patch a bit more, understand other organisations that are working and already doing frontline delivery. You're sort of bringing activist energy towards that sort of deeply rooted community energy that would be more like mutual aid then, which would be more like, you're not just here to put a sticking plaster on neoliberalism, you're here to make the change. So you then out of necessity, as things fall to pieces, we'll have to figure out feeding ourselves, we'll have to figure out having access to water and so on, the infrastructure point. And as part of that, we'll have to figure out what the social structure point, which is these are criterion Schmachtenberger's third attractor for the nerds out there, but how we make decisions together, how we tend conflict, how we heal, how we recover. There's something for some of us to have looked into the abyss and not be surprised when there's no food in the supermarket for a full week or whatever. The government here, by the way, and the European Union are inviting people to start storing food. I mean, this is mainstream now, some of it. So you do scenarios, but they would be done at people's assembly levels, and always throughout you're kind of inviting people to join into what's already in existence to strengthen it. Um, and for those that can, we'll be moving towards a citizens' assembly, I think at about the scale of 150,000 people. Um, and then we start to federate, we start to join together citizens' assemblies across bioregions, across common, the commons will matter, the watersheds will matter. People start to realise that their food is reliant on this watershed, then they're going to do something about it, aren't they? There's a very tiny story from Newcastle, I believe, where people were flooded, and I think it took out their power. I might be getting the details wrong, but and there's a moment when everybody's a bit on their knees. They've had their honeymoon period pulled together, and they're outside the corner shop, and they need some provisions. And the woman who runs it says, um, "I can't open it Sunday trading hours." And they're like, so open the flipping shop, and she's like, "Of course, like if there's social permission." So people are going to break the law, so-called law. I mean, we should ask whose law it is. That's what my Pan-African elders always say. Don't uphold laws till you know why it's there, right? So land ownership in the UK is nuts. 69% of land owned by 0.3% of the population. Obviously, we have to have that back to grow food on, and to regenerate nature and to support our water bodies. And that's just going to happen out of necessity. So we can plan for that and make sure that as those decisions are made, is because there's been a political education about land, for example, but also we've done some scenario planning around food. We've, in our communities, looked at what's coming, started storing food, started to try and take care of ourselves the best we can, but we've also got some plans. And then at the moment, when you're like, this is not a one-off like the pandemic was, it came and it went, this is the reality we live in, then the shifts will happen, I think.
Yeah, thanks for describing this picture a little bit more. And we will also post a link to the article in which you describe the collapse preparing communities more. And I just find it really powerful because you also write that, like, you see collapse kind of potentially linked to three different general overall scenarios: kind of chaos, or a kind of AI powered fascistic tech feudalism, or a kind of reorganization on a decentralized community based level that could enable collective liberation, which, yeah, it's just it is just really amazing to kind of go there, and also to kind of break this binary of, like, usually we think either we will be able to save ourselves or we will just go down in catastrophe. But, like, how can actually the breaking down of the current systems, which will also entail kind of suffering and shortages, not to romanticize it, but how can it bring people together? And I also loved Adam Greenfield's book.
Yeah.
And
And I think all
yeah,
three are going to happen. I just think all three are going to happen, but which one sort of uh, can really fully come to life and see off the others, if you like, is a key question. And to me, that's a question then of getting the form. By that, I mean something that feels very natural, feels very of nature, that nature figures out a form like a morphic resonance piece, and then it can replicate. I don't mean it's the same in each community. I mean that there's some sort of form that arrives. And also it's the energy of young ones. Like, I'm 53 this year. I'd love to figure out being a decent elder and supporting the spaces that we have, and it's that energy and that wellness and that recovery of wellness. Uh, what I love about it, so this thing that you described, the sort of regenerative possibility. I mean, with my friend Giacomo, we talk about seeding transformation. We can't know what's going to happen. It damn well seems worth trying, right? But um, there's something. I think I lost my thread. Um, yeah, we don't know what happened, but we've just got to give it a try. There was an extra piece in there, but it's gone. menopausal.
Yeah, if it comes back, just pop it in.
Or
But I also, because our documentary talks about the key importance of restoring water cycles in this context of imagining kind of regeneration and collective liberation in response to the climate crisis. And I just wonder, like, what's your view on the role of water
Yeah,
and restoring water cycles in this whole context of like your vision for
yeah.
what might be possible, how we respond to the climate crisis.
Thank you. I did remember what I wanted to say, which is the thing with civil disobedience is that you're sort of trying to get everybody on the streets and, or not everybody who can be there, and make it inclusive as possible, and some people back office, etc. But it's got a particular purpose. With this, it's sort of everybody's, the medicine of everybody, the thing that everybody can bring is needed. You know, some people are good teachers, some people are good at facilitation, some people are good growers, some people are engineers of water. You know, there is just, everybody's needed, and that's what sort of feels beautiful. And then as part of that, what really matters is the container, like how do we show up together in a way that's anti-patriarchal and is regenerative. um yeah, I like, so water. I mean, like it's almost, it feels, I hesitate because it's sort of like just chatting about God. Oh well, God this, God that. You know, we're talking about water, right? Um, I well somehow want to cry. Like, of course, it's yeah, like you say, water is love, water is life. I'm doing Vision Quest this year. I'm gonna go and sit on Dartmoor for 4 days without food or water. It's in a held way, but I will be on my own. And yeah, they say it very much changes your relationship with water. And um, I just hope that we have enough knowledge and enough practice people around that. uh, when people are waking up in the UK, there's a real sort of resistance around water that I wrote about on my blog, which is a Buy Me a Coffee blog with my name. But there's a lot going off in the UK around testing water quality, and um, there's different campaigning movements. I myself didn't pay a water bill. There's people refusing to pay bills, trying to get water out of corporate ownership and so on. And still really knowing that without the water we're done for. My sort of colleague, I mean, we don't particularly work together, but I consider him a colleague and friend, and a pain in the neck, Roger Hallam, bless him, because he's in jail, and they were supposed to release him recently, and they've kept him because he's a powerful guy. They've just kept him. I mean, it's quite astonishing. We're working out what to do, but other his close people are. But anyway, I want to mention him because he's sort of gone this route recently of talking about human extinction and geoengineering. And I didn't listen to the whole thing. I'm not sure where the science is on that. I neither want to jump into some because part of me would like to, some magical thinking, if we just think through water we'll be fine. Like, I just don't know what we've already unleashed, what's happening with the permafrost, um, what's happening with the albedo effect, etc., the tipping points. There's a lot to contend with that's already unleashed, you know. So, but it's sort of, in some ways, it's kind of simple. Even if human extinction was something that was coming, and it could be, it's not off the table as a possibility. Um, the people that are alive up to that point, they're going to need some water. Let's take care of our water, and maybe by taking care of our water, it will link us more to the biodiversity and to life. It we had three demands in Extinction Rebellion, Martin, and one was about tell the truth. Come on, we used to be a bit punk chic, you know, we're fucked and all that. The second one was about a net zero target. I now realise how controversial that phrase is, but anyway, we just meant overall there's no carbon coming out. And there was a biodiversity comment in that second demand that we had to fight to have in, some of us, and we sort of, and it sort of gets left out, pushed to the side. And yeah, the that piece that I think Charles Eisenstein was the first person I read who wrote brilliantly about it on what was his climate book?
Climate, a New Story.
Thank you.
I
Yeah,
think it was 2018. Yeah.
yeah. So that book, really sort of bringing home that just to recreate, not just, but it can be a recreation of modernity, the sort of carbon fundamentalism, and that the water is the piece to focus on. That it's something like when I'm using this word form, if you follow that flow, lots of other things will come around it. Will have to come around it. Probably everything will have to come around it. So yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Gail. I really appreciate your constant inquiry and deep humility with which you approach all of this. And also, yeah, appreciated this moment of reverence for water. Yeah, it's actually, yeah, it touched me to see how much you were moved. You are moved by water.
Mm.
And also maybe just as a very last question, like obviously we'll put the link to your blog into the comments, so for people to read the pieces that we've been referring to. But like if other people want to get involved in this work with culture parent communities, or like how can people learn more or get engaged about the work that you're doing?
Sure, thank you for that question. At the end of the blog, there is I'm afraid to say, a WhatsApp group to join, and it's already creaking at the seams a bit. We're trying to create a container at the minute. We might go on to that platform called Hilo. That's looking really cool to me. I don't know if you know that one, but because really it's about how things weave together, but you sort of have to stop. It's like get something together and you grow from there, don't you? You get the form and get some of the designs. So I'm saying that because it's not like, oh, join here and he'll find your place. It's not that well organized yet. I'm hoping we're not too far off and something more organized. And certainly reading Adam Greenfield's book Lifehouse would be a good starting point. And very simply, people just want to get stuck in, roll up your sleeves, get involved in things locally, get to know. It's a very corny thing to say, but knowing your neighbours, knowing the organisations that are there. I also wrote a blog about water for people in the UK, about where they can go and get involved in the resistance or the activism around water as well. So there's always a lot to do. But yeah, if people have particular skills in terms of, we're trying to build this container that ourselves, but I suspect other networks might join in. We need to do what, again, it's Mickey Kashtan's work, Paul Kawati at Navigate talks about the 7 living systems. Like, how do we create spaces together where we're well? And you think about conflict, you think about feedback, how decisions are made, how you share information, how we tend our connection and our community, especially the different identities that we walk, how we support each other, and so on. Anybody who's got specific skills related to thinking about those things, because you can have as many documents as you want about feedback systems. Somebody's got to help bring it to life. We have to act in against the for the regenerative systems and to keep and check the patriarchal systems, and that means something. So yeah, so everybody's welcome, and message me through the blog or jump into WhatsApp, but also like specifically for what I've just said speaks to you, be in touch as well.
Thank you so much, Gail. Really appreciate your time and sharing your heart and mind and all the richness of your work. Yeah, thanks so much.
Well, thanks for the beautiful film. I hope people have watched it. If you watch it,
Yeah, and if you haven't watched it, go to waterislovefilm.org and you can watch it today.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Just 1 second.